remembered them. So thank you for that. Let me start by asking you a question about children and the safety of children. President Biden's administration, his HHS, issued a rule, so it's binding, requiring that every doctor in America, including pediatricians who receive any kind of federal funding, so that's anybody who takes ACA funding, anybody who takes CHIP funding, this is almost every health provider in America, requiring them to conduct gender transition and gender so-called affirming procedures. So that means hormones, that means puberty blockers, that means surgeries in some cases. They imposed that rule on doctors across the country. This has been litigated, and it has been actually stopped by a couple of courts who found that it was way outside of HHS's jurisdiction. My question to you is, will you rescind this rule that imposes this radical policy, and talk about being anti-science, this radical policy on just about every pediatrician in the United States of America?
Yes, I will. And
hey, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. Today, I'm breaking down a pivotal exchange between Senator Josh Hawley and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. during a recent Senate hearing. They covered serious issues impacting healthcare, children's rights, and federal policies. Stick around for the top takeaways you need to know. And before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Let's start with one of the most controversial points. Senator Hawley confronted RFK about a Biden administration rule requiring doctors to perform gender-affirming procedures on minors. RFK plans to rescind this rule, calling it anti-science and harmful to children. It's a bold stance, and it's got a lot of people talking. What do you think about this decision? Let me know in the comments below. RFK emphasized the need for respect and diversity in healthcare decisions. He pointed out that forcing doctors to perform procedures they oppose doesn't make sense. RFK argued that children shouldn't be making life-altering decisions. He cited the Cass report, highlighting the negative impacts of these procedures on minors. This got a lot of nods from lawmakers and viewers alike. Next up, a major point on fetal tissue research. Under Trump, federal funding for research involving fetal tissue from elective abortions was stopped. RFK committed to reinstating that ban, saying modern stem cell research can use alternatives like umbilical cords. This shift aligns with pro-life advocates' concerns and has sparked a renewed debate on ethical research practices. RFK was also asked about Title X funding. He confirmed he would reinstate the Trump-era rule prohibiting taxpayer money from going to organizations like Planned Parenthood that perform or refer for abortions. On mifepristone, the chemical abortion drug, RFK said he would study its safety. Senator Hawley highlighted concerns about the Biden administration allowing abortion pills to be mailed without a doctor visit. RFK appeared open to reconsidering this policy. If you're finding this breakdown helpful, smash that like button and share this video with your friends. To wrap it up, RFK plans to reverse many of Biden's healthcare and reproductive policies, signaling a return to Trump-era pro-life stances at HHS. These are big changes that could affect millions of Americans. What are your thoughts on RFK's commitments? Drop a comment below, and let's have a conversation. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kennedy, welcome. I enjoyed our conversation last month in our office. And thank you for remembering, as you did again today, my uncles who we talked about, Morris and Lauren and Jean, who all have recently passed away from Parkinson's, grew up in a farm family. That was kind of you to remember them. So thank you for that. Let me start by asking you a question about children and the safety of children. President Biden's administration, his HHS, issued a rule, so it's binding, requiring that every doctor in America, including pediatricians who receive any kind of federal funding, so that's anybody who takes ACA funding, anybody who takes CHIP funding, this is almost every health provider in America, requiring them to conduct gender transition and gender so-called affirming procedures. So that means hormones, that means puberty blockers, that means surgeries in some cases. They imposed that rule on doctors across the country. This has been litigated, and it has been actually stopped by a couple of courts who found that it was way outside of HHS's jurisdiction. My question to you is, will you rescind this rule that imposes this radical policy, and talk about being anti-science, this radical policy on just about every pediatrician in the United States of America?
Yes, I will. And by the way, that rule is anti-science. The most thorough meta-review on gender-affirming care has come out in the Cass report, which reports really catastrophic impacts on children. And that is science. It's a meta review of all the existing scientific studies. But, you know, even more just from a common sense, if you're a patient, do you really want somebody performing surgery on you who is morally opposed to that surgery? It doesn't make any sense. We need to embrace diversity in this country. Are people who believe that's important? I respect them. We should hear them out. We should debate. We should have a congenial conversation. There are also people who believe that it is an atrocity, and they need to be listened to too. And we need to embrace diversity and make room for diversity in this country and not force people to do things that are against their conscience.
And let me just point out that on this rule, what's particularly pernicious about it is we're talking about gender transition surgeries, gender transition care on minor children. This rule purported to preempt all state law. So in states like mine and many others, where the voters have said, we don't want gender transition procedures performed on minors, the Biden administration attempted to use federal money and force pediatricians to do it anyway. So I'm glad to hear you say you'll rescind that rule. I think it's terrific for the safety of children.
And Senator, I would add that we don't let children drink. We don't let them drive an automobile because they have bad judgment. They are flooded with hormones. Their brains are still in formation. Their sexuality is still in formation. To allow them to make judgments about that are going to have life-changing, forever implications for the rest of their life at that age is unconscionable, particularly in light of the Cass report.
I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you a question about NIH research, if I may. I know this is something that you care a lot about. Under the first Trump presidency—
And I do want to add that people who have gender differences should be respected. They should be loved. But loving them does not sometimes love means saying no to people.
Let me, on NIH, under the first Trump presidency, HHS stopped new NIH research that involved human fetal tissue from elective abortions. Now, you were asked about this sort of tangentially yesterday by Senator Cantwell, and I want to get your quote right. You said to her correctly, you said stem cell research today can be done on umbilical cords and you don't need any fetal tissue, which is correct. My question to you is, will you reinstate President Trump's policy that ensures that no federal research and no federal tax dollars is conducted on fetal tissue taken from elective abortions?
Yes.
Fantastic. Let me ask you just about Title X. You were asked about this yesterday too, and I think I understand your answer. I just want to be sure I've got it crystal clear. Title X, which prohibits the funding of the use of federal taxpayer funding for abortions or to flow to entities like Planned Parenthood that perform abortions or refer people to abortions. You were asked yesterday if you would support President Trump's rule that says no Title X funding for those who perform abortions or refer people to abortions. I think your answer was yes, you would reinstate that rule. I just want to be sure I'm right about that.
Yes.
Fantastic. Last point that I have for you. On mifepristone, the chemical abortion drug, you said yesterday that you would study its safety. I think that's good. I want to make an additional point here just about how the Biden administration changed the rules on mifepristone that I hope that you'll take into consideration, because you pointed out— I'm almost done, Mr. Chairman. You pointed out that we need to honor the wishes of voters and states and their right to set life policy. I just point out that the Biden administration's rule on mifepristone, which they did after the Dobbs decision, means that in any state, including ones like mine, where voters or state legislators say, we don't want abortion performed after a certain point, if the Biden administration rule on chemical abortion stands and you can mail in these abortion drugs without a doctor visit or referral, that means no state ban, no state decision, no voter decision is going to matter. We're going to have a one-size-fits-all policy set here in Washington. I hope you'll take that into consideration.
I will implement President Trump's policies.